This is Deborah Atkinson, and you're listening to Flipping 50, where I address your top questions and things you struggle with most so you can have more energy and less decision fatigue about what to eat, how to move, and you can change your thoughts to Flip 50 with the life and the energy you love in the second half. And my guest today is here to talk about an issue that I've been bringing up in the last several weeks. If you're listening while we're doing this live, during summer and travel season for a lot of us, I had a gut health issue. I threw it out to my subscribers, my Facebook group, and said, hey, I had a problem while I was traveling. It took me quite by surprise, but I had an answer. And actually, I had a room full of people with answers. Would you like to hear what they had to say? And your answers was a resounding yes. So Ken Brown today is actually the guy who rode in on the white horse for me. And it was his solution that made me feel better by the next morning. So Dr. Ken Brown, I'll introduce you. He received his medical degree from the University of Nebraska Medical School and completed his fellowship in gastroenterology in San Antonio, Texas. He's a board-certified gastroenterologist and has been in practice for over 15 years with a clinical focus on inflammatory bowel disease and irritable bowel syndrome. Dr. Brown declared that his mission is to bridge the gap between medical and natural science. For over a decade, he's been conducting clinical research for various pharmacologic companies. Dr. Brown recognized an unmet need for something natural that could help his IBS patients find relief. After developing the only all-natural and clinically proven answer for IBS and bloating for over 6 years, Ontrantil launched in the summer of 2015. Dr. Brown developed Ontrantil to help those suffering from the symptoms of IBS, which we now know are caused by bacterial overgrowth. Ken, thanks so much for being here.
Deborah, thank you so much. It is truly an honor to be here, and I love the endorsement. Thank you for at least trying my product when you were in the time of need.
Oh my God. Yeah. And then I went to the back of the room, greedy little person that I am. And I was like, I wonder if there's any more samples back there. I need that in my bag. So, nobody loves to talk about this. And, what I find is unless I bring it up, a lot of times women in my group or women who I begin a coaching relationship haven't necessarily volunteered this. But the problem is I do bring it up because very rarely do they talk about it with their physicians too. And, somebody's got to deal with it. So I'm so glad you're addressing it because I would be willing to bet 80% of our listeners occasionally have been either diagnosed by a doctor or they feel they might have IBS, for sure, bloating. So what have you got? What's the common cause of bloating? Because I think we're all baffled. Foods that never did this to us are doing this to us.
So the first thing I want to clarify for your listeners is that when I talk about bloating, what I'm describing is if you eat and you get bloated, meaning your belly gets puffy, almost like you're a few months pregnant, that's the type of bloating that I really deal with. Sometimes it gets confused with water gain and things like that. But what we're talking about is if you eat and you bloat, there is a high likelihood that you could have bacteria growing where it shouldn't be, known as small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And what that means is if you go through a period of stress, have an infection, or take antibiotics, that can actually shock an area of your intestines that should be sterile, and it allows bacteria to start growing there. Then whenever you eat specifically starchy things, the bacteria will break it down and just start releasing all this gas. The hydrogen gas then starts accumulating, and then that's a perfect environment for other types of bacteria to use it as fuel. And then they start producing another type of gas called methane, and now we've got this vicious cycle going on. So by far, the most common thing I see in my practice is when people come in and they've been told they have irritable bowel syndrome or IBS, and then when I ask them a series of questions exactly like I just described, I can go, no, I really think that we can fix you. And I think that it's because you've got some bacteria growing where it shouldn't be. It's not really that bacteria are good or bad. It's that they're just growing where they shouldn't be.
Great clarification. And and I can probably vouch for majority of the women, at least the clients I work with, that is indeed it. I mean, it is that kind of bloating that there is that water retaining going on as well, that I think we can separate. And so many of us are having that issue. But why would it be, Ken, that it might be happening more in midlife during hormone changes than it ever did before?
And that is a fantastic angle. I see it a lot that when there are hormone changes, there's actually intestinal motility changes. So if you have, and I see it also with younger women when they go through their cycle and such, that it'll actually cause motility changes in the intestines. And then that allows the bacteria to start growing, and it just becomes more and more common. I'm seeing it so often that literally when I actually address it, I'm getting an answer like, well, of course, everyone does.
Oh,
and you
no.
realize, oh my goodness, are we actually getting to a point where people are just accepting it? Yeah. You don't have to. We can fix these issues. And, unfortunately, with the American diet, it's very hard to not have an inflammatory type diet if you're eating a lot of processed foods. And the bacteria that are growing where they shouldn't, they love all that processed food. So it is interesting that so many people think it's so normal that they don't even complain to their doctor about it.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that. And I would say, again, this 90% number comes back to me again and again, but I think probably 90% of the women who come into a 28-day kickstart, because I have the closest relationship with that group, and they have accepted. So when we ask the screening question about constipation and diarrhea in particular, so most women identify bloating and they know they want that to go away. But when we ask about constipation and diarrhea, they just think, oh, that's my normal. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to distinguish. So let's talk. Is bloating ever related to IBS, to SIBO, colitis, or other GI diseases? So there's so much out there that I think we kind of skimmed through, and maybe we should go back. So you skimmed over SIBO, right? Which I think a lot of women probably are seeing written, but maybe not connecting it with what you just said, right? The small intestine bacterial overgrowth. So that is SIBO. I mean, what else? Are these all related, or are they very different? And how do we know?
Oh, this is the beauty of it. We're finally really kind of tying this whole Venn diagram together. The way that I view this one circle as being irritable bowel syndrome. And then if you can imagine another circle being diet, and then that third circle being, I'm going to say, leaky gut or intestinal permeability. What those three things tie together, and right in the middle of that Venn diagram, is probably the root cause of so much of chronic disease that is actually going on right now. If you think about it, so the whole SIBO, the SIBO, what I mentioned just briefly at the very beginning there was something happens and it changes the motility. Bacteria starts to grow. Then when you eat, the bacteria produce all this gas. That's the annoying thing that people don't want to talk to their doctor about. What I see as a specialist is I see the end result of this, because if that sticks around for a long time, now suddenly we're talking about chronic inflammation. So if you have chronic inflammation, that can lead to autoimmune diseases, all kinds of autoimmune diseases. And that's when your body sort of attacks itself. That you mentioned a word, colitis.
Yeah.
Crohn's and colitis is an autoimmune disease. I mean, there's thyroid issues. There's all these other types of autoimmune diseases that are completely on the rise. And now we realize that a lot of that can be prevented if we protect our guts first. There's even some evidence that brain inflammation is actually caused by gut inflammation. I've been to some lectures where I've talked to scientists who have models to show that in children, autism can be related to that, and in adults, dementia is related to that. That's cradle to grave. So if we can protect our guts our entire life, then maybe we can avoid some of these issues. So
Definitely.
yeah, you have the annoying bloating that people put up with that they just say doesn't everybody. What people don't realize is that bloating can then turn into a more chronic situation. And then now you have inflammation in your body. And you work with a lot of people that deal with a lot of different issues. Well, it's all tied together. This is a very holistic approach to everything.
Right.
I was recently going over some studies where it's pretty fascinating, but for your audience, they actually showed there's a lab called the Mather Institute that has something that isn't even published yet, but they have mouse models showing that this type of bacteria that I'm talking about actually causes weight gain. So what I see all the time is I have people come into me and they say, look, I got sick, 7 years ago, I got sick. I went traveling. And that's funny because we talk about the traveling, but traveling can be a cause of, can begin the whole process. And they say, and then I've just never been right since. Ever since then, I've been sick. And it's weird because I'm eating less and less and I'm gaining weight. And it's very frustrating. I feel fatigued. I got brain fog. They're describing exactly this whole inflammatory process. And now we have a lab that has actually proven that one of the types of bacteria that produces this methane leads to weight gain. And when you get rid of it, they actually showed improvement in cholesterol, LDL cholesterol. They lost weight, and they had overall inflammatory markers that actually decreased. So this is much more than just a nuisance. This is a crisis, in my opinion. I'm super happy that a lot of people are at least looking at this like yourself, and you're realizing the importance of gut health.
Yeah. I think there comes a time for women when, you just get sick and tired of being sick and tired. I know that's a big cliche, but that really describes it very well. Because we're not just talking about, oh, that's a little uncomfortable and my waistband is a little tighter. It actually, can interfere with you doing the things that you want to do. It can make you turn down social, events, and you start missing life when you're doing that. So I'm so glad you're addressing it. But okay, so here's the thing. Like, you saved me, right? I felt better, and it's the perfect situation. It could be at home as well, but here we are at a conference, right? And I'm looking forward to being with colleagues and interacting and networking. And then suddenly it's like, wow, where did this come from? This is not feeling good. And it's very distracting. So you gave me a little, 911, but that's kind of like, all right, we're fixing it after the problem. How can listeners prevent it from happening in the first place? It's nice to know that's there, but that's kind of like the morning after pill.
This is officially the first time that my product's ever been related to the morning after pill. I like
it. Well, suddenly you're very sexy, right?
So you're talking about when people travel, what can they do to kind of prevent this?
Yeah.
What you're getting at? Yeah. So I hear it all the time. In fact, I have a ton of patients that are either pilots or they're flight attendants.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's the most extreme version of how can travel really affect this. And it's really, I've got some great stories. I've had some really fun patients that have told me. It's a
family show here.
Oh, I know. It's so funny though, because these, when I'm talking to a flight attendant, they're like, can you imagine being on an 8-hour flight, being super bloated, you're cramped, and it's, and that's your job every single day.
And you're smiling.
So, and so they're a great example of what I try to talk to them about. So whenever we travel, we know that there's always something with this. Even if you're a seasoned traveler, there's always some stress that goes along with that. And when you have stress, that can actually affect the motility of your intestines. So that's the first part. The second thing is that typically a seasoned traveler is chronically dehydrated. If you're flying or if you're driving or whatever, you just never seem to quite have the amount of hydration that you probably should. So the dehydration sets into it. And then ultimately, your diet a lot of times is out of your control. I mean, unless you're going to a great conference that like JJ Virgin will put on where the food is fantastic, sometimes you're left with options that are just going to really kind of make you feel bad. So it's that combination that sets you up for failure when people go traveling and they have lots of issues. So if you tend to have constipation, obviously I'm going to say that if you're going to travel, then you should probably take Atrantil, my product, because we do know that it does help in all these situations. It is made of polyphenols, which are good molecules for you. So even if you're not having any issues, it's at least good for you. Okay,
that's what I wanted to ask. So you actually recommend taking it as a kind of a preventative, like as a vitamin, not the, the RX afterwards. So take it before problems happen?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. So what we do know is that this is sort of protection for your gut. So if you're exposed to new types of bacteria, the Atrantil, the molecules in it, actually have a antimicrobial effect. So let's say you go someplace and there's a different type of bacteria. That's how come we get what's called Montezuma's revenge or traveler's diarrhea. Yeah. Because it isn't that you're really being exposed to something that's making you sick. It's that your body's not used to that indigenous bacteria. So you're going to take that for prevention on that end. And then if you have food sensitivities like myself, I'm actually gluten intolerant. But I do have that issue. Whenever I travel, I always have to be wary of that. So I make sure that one of the first things I pack is my own product because I take it so that I don't have to worry that much about what I'm eating. And if I do eat a little gluten, it's not going to ruin my whole trip. And then ultimately, I kind of mentioned briefly about the polyphenols. Really quick, what these are the molecules that are on the skins of vegetables. It's what gives vegetables and fruits their rich, vibrant colors. It's the molecule in the Mediterranean diet. You are going to see so much cool research coming out over the next 5 years that the polyphenols are really the thing that works as an anti-aging molecule, and it's an anti-inflammatory and recovery molecule. So you work with a lot of people, you want them to exercise. Mm-hmm. We now know that there's a lot of data to show that, well, first of all, exercise is awesome because moderate stress will induce these adaptive changes, but you have to be able to recover. So just exercising 24/7, you'll get just as sick as if you didn't exercise at all. So you have to have periods of a little bit of exercise followed by some recovery. The polyphenols act as a recovery mechanism. Nice. And you're going to see all kinds of cool studies coming out. I'm working with a lot of scientists from around the world. I got these guys in South America that we've been looking at animal models, and I'm just getting so excited about what we can do for people's health in the next 5 years or so. That's fantastic. Well, I'm gonna throw a term out for you, and I don't want to be too confusing for everybody, but you're going to start hearing it more. You're going to start hearing something called postbiotics. So it took a long time for probiotics to come around, and then people started commenting on prebiotics, which a prebiotic is just some form of fiber or food that you can't digest. So it goes to your colon where your colonic bacteria will feed off of it. That's what a prebiotic is. Probiotic is taking a live organism. Now, with all this cool research on polyphenols, we're starting to talk about postbiotics. These are the things that make us healthy. So when you eat right, your body will use these molecules. And if you have the right microbiome, then you will end up having beneficial products made for you. And these are known as these postbiotics. So you're going to see a lot of literature coming out in the next few years about that. We've always been talking about probiotics. Now is a big shift. I always say this, that if you see a pregnant woman, you say she's eating for 2. But really, we should all be eating for 100 trillion. If we give our bacteria what they want, then they will do good things for us. Ah, very cool. Very cool. And how are we going to discover how to eat? Oh my goodness. Did I just open a can of worms? You just opened a can of worms because I'm working with the team right now. You're going to get such a kick out of this. That what they're trying to do is have a toilet. They're working on either a toilet or toilet paper that has sensors on it that it can analyze what metabolites or postbiotic molecules are in your stool. So, for instance, this may be why many people when they take supplements, it may work on somebody, but not on another person. And the reason is that you need certain bacteria to break down certain things. Omega-3 fatty acids, meaning like fish oil, other different types of molecules, different types of polyphenols. If you have a diet that is that is essentially very preservative heavy, very sugar heavy, and so on, you will colonize your colonic bacteria with more of those types of bacteria. So you can try to supplement by taking in different things if you go and take certain supplements, but as long as the majority of the bacteria are craving this junk food, it won't be able to utilize what you're giving it to sort of hedge your bet. And what I mean by that is you have to change your lifestyle and your diet. You can't just take a supplement and fix everything.
Yeah.
So,
amen. Can we just say that again? Amen, amen, amen.
So there's some crazy science out there where people are looking at toilet paper that could say, look, you're deficient in these. I know, isn't it fascinating? You're deficient in these molecules, which have been shown to be anti-inflammatory and beneficial for you. Therefore, instead of trying to take more supplements to do that, eat more of these things, which will encourage that type of bacteria to grow so that you can produce more of these beneficial type postbiotics. So I know I'm going off a rabbit hole, but I get really geeked out when I start talking about science, and it gets really exciting. And
talking about toilet paper is so exciting.
I know, but analytic toilet paper, fancy toilet paper, this is not double ply. This is like got microchips in it. So someday you'll sit here and go, oh, I heard this on a podcast once. And
that is actually though, so, I mean, it's just like so next century is what it feels like.
Oh, yeah. And this is the coolest thing about this. You mentioned in the beginning in my intro that I'm trying to bridge the gap. What I'm just absolutely loving is that once you start knocking down barriers and you open your mind. I'm a traditionally trained gastroenterologist, and I did pharmaceutical research for 10 years. Then I started realizing that we could solve a problem naturally. And once I did that, I just start meeting new scientists. I travel a lot now. I go to lectures everywhere, and there's a whole new world. And that's what I want to do. I want to bring all this stuff mainstream quicker than it should, because it's very difficult to change the minds of the medical establishment. I think it's becoming a little bit better. The functional medicine movement is helping a ton. But I will tell you that a lot of my colleagues don't believe in a lot of the things that I talk about. And I'm okay with that, because as long as we're helping people, that's the bottom line.
That so is. I love what you're doing. And coming back to Entrantile, I work with a lot of athletes, or did, and, consider myself one. And I love the fact that Entrantile is NSF certified. So, that detail I let escape me until I felt better, and then started looking closer at the label. I was like, as if I care, just does it work, right? That's what I wanted to know. But tell our listeners what that means and why that's such a great thing.
So NSF certification is a big deal. What this means is that you're certified for sport. We decided to go the extra mile and submit our product to be NSF certified. And what you do is you take every single batch that you make, you send it to a third party to analyze every aspect of it, where it's sourced from, where it's made, the raw ingredients, and your label has to match exactly what is in that capsule. So knowing that we have always done everything the best that we possibly can, we source from great places, we have it manufactured at GMP certified places, we really felt that by putting that NSF certification, it would really differentiate us. And as it turns out, we're the only NSF certified polyphenol blend to help bloating. And we have had tremendous success with that, because it's the first time ever that athletes can actually, what I mean by athletes are collegiate and professional athletes,
yep,
can very confidently take this without fearing that they're going to violate any of the the banned substance type things.
Yeah.
What I love to say is, I'm like, this is such a perfect fit for us because we're NSF certified. These polyphenols can help in the recovery phase and they will help in the anti-inflammatory phase. I grew up with several friends that ended up playing professional football. And I don't want to date myself too much, but I'm in my late 40s and you start worrying about CTE. I've had friends that played, 15 years in the NFL, and we need to make sure that their brain inflammation is taken care of as well.
Yeah.
So I love the idea that we're NSF certified. You can start taking this early, and we now know that these postbiotics or these anti-inflammatory molecules that are produced when you take this are at least probably helping a little of the brain inflammation. My future research right now, what we're working on is the brain-gut connection. My big thing is it doesn't really matter if you stay in shape, but your brain goes when you're 70. I want to make sure that people are healthy in their brain and in their bodies. The two have to go together. And I think that we're on the verge of really changing this epidemic of dementia that's going on. And one way to do it is by having something where you protect their brains early in life. And I mean early meaning like when you're active, playing your sports, doing these different things. There's a lot of data out there right now to show that even minimal head trauma during like high school sports can actually cause a lasting effect and lead to scarring later in life.
Wow. Yeah, I love that. And, you come back to athletes and you think, talk about stress, right? It's funny that as we're recording, the Ironman here in Boulder was yesterday, right? So you think about before an event, all of the buildup and all of the things that an athlete goes through, and they've got to play, preparing themselves, getting the right rest, getting the right food, can't always do that, and then what could go wrong? I mean, there's just so much. And then you kind of extrapolate that. And, every listener out there is very much the same. Just life is a marathon, and a sprint all at once. And day to day, we're all under that kind of stress. Whether you've still got young kids and you're driving the bus, the taxi to this and that and the other thing. I mean, it's hard to fit in taking care of you. Sometimes hard to fit in going to the bathroom, getting a regular meal, getting a good meal. So I think, really important. I love knowing, if it's got that additional certification for sport. I just like knowing, taking it for me, it's got that, it's so great to know it. So, okay, Ken, where can everybody listening find out more about Atrantil? Maybe grab a sample. Where's the best place for them to go?
Well, we can go to atrantil.com, atrantil.com. Okay. And I think that we have a special deal for your listeners, right? Is it atrantil.com /Deborah?
/flipping50.
/flipping50. atrantil.com /flipping50. And there they can get some special deals, and we'll make sure that we take care of all of your listeners. And we want to protect your listeners' exercise recovery. We want to protect their brains. But I can say with our clinical studies that 4 out of 5 people are going to get their guts feeling better also. But this is a whole body type thing. This is part of a lifestyle.
So true. And I love, that you threw that in there. So it's a great reminder and summarize at the end, it's not a pill that's going to correct it. It's nice to know there's a little help from your friends. But, coming back to the meeting I was at where I just had an episode, I was at an event where we can always count on the food being immaculate. I mean, it was, that was not it. So it could have been stress. It could have been travel, dehydration. As much as we try, we can't always get it right. But, that's what we've got to do is do everything within our means first and then reach for the support when we do need it. So listeners, if you're out there and did we come up with something other that was maybe fun? So I think it might be lovemytummy.com /flipping50. Yeah.
That's probably what it is.
I'm going to put that in the show notes for all of you listeners. So we've got it.
Lovemytummy.com.
I know, right?
Flipping 50. Yes. So everybody that's listening, the most common thing is, how'd you come up with the name? That's a whole separate story.
Oh, yeah.
This is a whole separate thing. But yeah, you're right. Love My Tummy is certainly much easier to remember than I try to.
It's true. But yes, and I so appreciate that you have the here's how you pronounce it for me, because I've been practicing. So I've got it nailed. Okay, so toughest question of the day. Ken, is there a question that I should have asked you that I didn't?
One simple question.
Yeah.
That, outside of this, what is the greatest life hack that your listeners can do? That's a question that I was going to see how I could fit this in, because I'm very passionate about one particular thing, besides gut health, because it all plays into it. The one perfect life hack that does all these things that we talk about. It improves your guts. It improves inflammation. It improves recovery. It helps your brain. And it cannot be stressed enough, because it seems like as a nation, we don't do this. Sleep. A proper sleep regimen will do wonders for your life.
Awesome. I second that right after exercise. But yeah. I'm so glad you weren't going to say upgrade your toilet paper. Okay. Awesome. Thanks, Ken, so much for being here and sharing.
Thank you so much, Deborah. This was awesome.
Listeners, if there's a question that you have that we didn't ask, submit your question. Just leave it below the show link at flipping50.com and join us on the Flipping 50 TV Facebook page. To get all the juicy resources, there are a lot of places you can connect with Ken and get the URL to learn more about Entrantil. There I went. I blew it at the very end.
Love My Tummy. Love My Tummy.
That URL will be in the show notes. So if you're walking, you're lifting, or you're commuting, don't worry about stopping. I've got you covered. Flipping50.com/podcast. And if you enjoy the show, please leave a rating in iTunes. It really helps. And then share this with a friend to surround yourself with a supportive community of women on the same journey. What are you waiting for? Start Flipping 50 today.